הטוב והרע. אל תירא ואל תפחד, my son. I have nothing I can give but this chance that you may live. I pray we'll meet again if he will deliver us.
The Hebrews grew too numerous. They might have risen against us.
Father, tell me you didn't do this.
Moses, sometimes for the greater good, sacrifices must be made.
Sacrifices?
Oh, my son, they were only slaves.
You who I call brother, how could you have come to hate me so? Is this what you wanted?
I said the sword, I said the
Then let my heart be hardened, and never mind how high the cost may grow. This will still be so. I will never let your people go.
Thus saith the Lord.
Thus saith the Lord. I will not let my people go.
He saw all the matters occurring in the other regions. He observed the comments on the visions and dreams of Inanna, who insinuated herself over the entire domain of Dumuzi, speaking about his return. Inanna was not content with what she had. She planned more and awaited Dumuzi's return to have her powerful and dreamed reign. Thus, Marduk, Ra, was disturbed and felt that something needed to be done. To counter Inanna's expansion plans, Marduk was determined to find answers about death, resurrection, and immortality. The ideas of a deity who could grant life were extremely attractive to him. So Ra declared himself a powerful god. He considered that the secret had been told to Gilgamesh and other demigods of the Uruk region who sought the deeds and the path of immortality. Marduk, Ra, said, "If it was granted to others, let it be applied to the kings of my region too. Let the kings of the second region in Egypt and Nubia receive the instructions. Let the descendants of Neteru travel to Nibiru in the other life, on their journey beyond life, in the afterlife." Thus, Ra taught the kings how to build tombs facing east.
You and your people have my permission to go. Leave me!
Priest scribes. In it were described the details for the journey in the other life, to the beyond of life, detailing the post-death journey. The book told of how to reach Duat, the place of celestial ships. Duat was the Egyptian name for the fourth region, on the Sinai Peninsula. And then Marduk, Ra, taught how to build tombs facing east. He taught how to ascend through a stairway to heaven and journey to the imperishable planet. He noted that one should drink from the plant of life the waters of youth, until satiety comes. He clarified the coming of the gods to earth. Ra explained to the priests the knowledge of the gods, and he told them that gold is the splendor of life. He said, "Gold is the flesh of the gods." Then Ra demonstrated how to obtain gold and said that there should be expeditions to Abzu and the lower domain to obtain the gold. Then, with the force of arms, the kings and commanders of Ra conquered lands that were not their own. Marduk, Ra, invaded the lands of his brothers, and they complained to Enki, Marduk's father, known in ancient Egypt as Ptah. Enki, Ptah, talked with his son Ra. But Ra did not listen to his father. The plan in his heart was to become the lord of the four regions, and in front of his father, unyielding and determined, Marduk, Ra, pronounced, "The earth is mine, and I will rule the entire planet." After the transfer of the royalty of Uruk to Ur, the city of Nannar and Ningal, they joyfully smiled upon the people. As was appropriate for his rank of number 30, the moon god Nannar was worshipped, and he decreed 12 festivals per year, one for each lunar month. He dedicated a month to each of the 12 great Anunnaki. And so, it spread throughout the first region, for both the great and small Anunnaki gods. Sanctuaries and temples were built, and so the people could pray directly to their gods. In the first region, civilization spread from Sumer to other neighboring lands. In the cities of Men, local rulers were appointed as righteous shepherds. Artisans and farmers, shepherds and weavers exchanged their products throughout the region. Laws of justice were decreed. Trade, marriage, and divorce contracts were honored. In schools, the young studied. The scribes recorded hymns, proverbs, and wisdom. Abundance and happiness were spread across all lands. Disputes and invasions also existed. Meanwhile, Inanna in her celestial ship went from land to land. Near the upper sea, she frolicked with Utu, and also went to her uncle Ishkur's domains. Inanna liked to call Ishkur Dudu, beloved, and during her flights, Inanna took pleasure in the people who inhabited the upper plain between the two rivers. She found the sound of their language pleasant, and she learned how to speak it. They gave Inanna the name of Ishtar, and this was the name of the planet Lahamu in their language. It was they who named the city of Uruk, and in the language of that people, Ishkur was called Adad, and Nanar was known as Sin. The city of Urim was called by then as Ur, like we are already calling. Ki-Engi was named as Sumer, land of the lofty watchers. Utu, the bright sun, was named Shamash, and Enlil came to be known as Father Enlil, while Nibru-Ki became Nippur. All this was a stark contrast and a glaring difference. In the second region, Ra did not allow diversity, for he desired to reign alone. Ra proclaimed that he was the oldest of heaven, the firstborn who is on earth from the earliest times. He decreed that hymns should be sung this way, and that he wished to be called and known as such by the priests. Lord of eternity, he who made perpetuity, presiding over all gods.
Those words were given publicly in 1972. 5 years later, in 1977, Paul VI doubled down and said the following, quote, "The tail of the devil is functioning in the disintegration of the Catholic world," said Pope Paul VI on October 13, 1977, in a formal address marking the 60th anniversary of the sixth and final Fatima apparition, the miracle of the sun, at Fatima, Portugal, on October 13, 1917. The darkness of Satan has entered and spread throughout the Catholic Church, even to its summit. Apostasy, the loss of the faith, is spreading throughout the world and into the highest levels within the Church. Pope Paul VI's remarks on Satan's indwelling even the highest levels of the Catholic Church were reported on the following day, October 14, 1977, in a Milan-based daily newspaper, Corriere della Sera. In an interview in Vanity Fair that appeared in 2016, Father Amorth was asked about Satan. Is Satan a person, a physical being? And what is the influence of the diabolical in the world today? Father Amorth's answer will sound familiar to those who believe that the diabolical was enthroned in the Vatican in the 1960s, as Malachi Martin attested. Quote, "Father, you write of dialogues you've had with Satan. Have you ever seen him?" I asked Father Amorth. "Satan is pure spirit. He often appears as something else, to mislead. He appeared to Padre Pio as Jesus, to frighten him. He sometimes appears as a raging animal. The ritual of exorcism is not practiced by an ordinary priest. An exorcist requires specific training and must be thought to have a personal sanctity. He can be exposed to dangerous behavior and personal threat. His prayer often causes a violent response as he attempts to shine a beam of light into the darkness. You said publicly that you believe, referring to the current church scandals, that Satan is in the Vatican. Do you believe this?" Yes. Today Satan rules the world. The masses no longer believe in God. And yes, Satan is in the Vatican. St. Paul's Chapel is Cappella Paiolina. Sorry for my horrible pronunciation of Italian, but that is what they're talking about, not the St. Paul's Audience Hall, which that serpentine-looking building with the very bizarre and frankly demonic-looking statues that are that adorn the stage right behind where the Pope sits whenever he gives a personal audience. So let's not confuse those two buildings.
The great lone and unique. Ra pronounced, "I am Ra, and I am above all other gods." Then he attributed his powers and attributes to himself. Ra continued, "I am like Enlil for lordships and decrees. I am like Ninurta for the hoe and combat. I am like Adad for thunderbolts and thunder. I am like Nanar to light the night. As Utu, I am Shamash as Nergal. I reign over the lower world. As Gibil, I know the depths of gold from where copper and silver come. It was I who found it. As Ningishzida, I command the numbers and their count. The heavens speak of my glory. At these proclamations, all the Anunnaki leaders were greatly alarmed. Marduk's brothers decided to talk to their father, Enki, while Nergal relayed his concerns to Ninurta. Enki, Ptah, went to talk with Marduk, Ra. He asked, "What happened? Your claims are unheard of." Marduk, Ra, said, "Father, it's the heavens. The heavens speak, and they speak of my supremacy." Marduk continued, "The bull of heaven, the sign of Enlil's constellation, was slain by his own offspring. In the heavens, the age of Ram, the age of Aries, my era is coming. The omens are unmistakable." Then, from his dwelling in Eridu, Enki examined the circle of 12 constellations. On the first day of spring, at the beginning of a year, the sunrise was carefully observed. The sun that rose that day was in the stars of the constellation of the Bull. In Nippur and Ur, Enlil and Nanar also made the observations. In the lower world, where the station of instruments was, Nergal confirmed the results. The age of the rams was distant. That was still the age of the bull. It was Enlil's bull. In his domains, Marduk did not back down from his assertions. He had the support of Nabu, his son. To domains that were not his, he sent emissaries to announce that his time had come. The Anunnaki leaders asked for Ningishzida to teach people how to observe the sky. In his wisdom, Ningishzida conceived stone structures. Ninurta and Ishkur helped build them. In the established lands near and far, they taught people how to observe the sky, showing the people that the sun still rose in the constellation of the Bull. In those times, after the Anunnaki declared themselves as gods, they now depended on the support of humanity. Enki watched these events with attention and sadness. He pondered how fate could be being distorted. In the first region, the Anunnaki decided to unify the lands under the name of just one leader, desiring a warrior king. Thus, Inanna was assigned to the task of finding the suitable man for this. Inanna indicated to Enlil a warrior whom she had found and loved during her travels. He was the son of a commander of 4 garrisons, and his father's name was Arbakad. His mother was a high priestess. Enlil offered him scepter and crown. He received the name Sargon I, righteous regent. As in Nibiru, a new crown city was established to unify the lands. That was called Agade, the unified city, and it was not far from Kishi. Agade unified the lands of Sumer and Akkad. Enlil granted powers to King Sargon, and Inanna accompanied her warriors with her weapons. All lands from the lower sea to the upper sea obeyed Sargon's command. Thus all his troops were stationed at the borders of the 4th region to protect it. And Marduk, Ra, constantly observed the movements of Inanna and Sargon. Caution was the word of the moment. And Sargon made a bold move. He went to the place where Marduk tried to build the tower that rose to the heavens and proclaimed that it was a sacred ground for Agade. He mentioned imposing the bright heavenly object there. Marduk raced furiously to the 1st region with Nabu and his followers. He went to the place of the tower and said, "I am the sole possessor of the sacred ground, and by me will a gateway of the gods be established. Marduk was vehement and offered instructions for his followers to divert the river. They raised dikes and walls at the tower place. They built for Marduk a new house. It was called Esagil, the house for the utmost god. Nabu named it Babylon, the gateway of the gods, in honor of his father, in the heart of Eden. Thus, Marduk settled in the midst of the first region, in the heart of Eden. With this, the wrath of Inanna knew no bounds. Armed, their followers attacked Marduk's followers. The blood of the people was shed, unlike anything ever seen on earth before. Nergal traveled to Babylon and met his brother Marduk. He asked Marduk to leave Babylon for the good of the people. Nergal invited Marduk to travel to observe the skies, and Marduk agreed to leave. Thus, he traveled from land to land, observing the signs of the heavens. Marduk, known as Ra in the second region, received another name. He was called Amun, the Invisible, because he ruled but was not there. For a time, Inanna calmed down and carefully watched the two sons of Sargon, who were his successors. Later, on the throne of Agade, Sargon's grandson, known as Naram-Sin, took the throne. Those times were different times. In those times, Enlil and Ninurta were absent from the first region. They had gone to the lands beyond the oceans. And in the second region, Ra was also not there because he traveled to other lands. Thus, Inanna saw the opportunity to take all the powers for herself. She ordered Naram-Sin to seize all the lands. She instructed the king to attack ancient Egypt and Meluha, Nubia. Those were domains of Marduk, also called Ra and Amun, the Invisible. In those times, Naram-Sin committed the sacrilege of crossing the fourth region with an army of earthlings. He also invaded ancient Egypt and tried to enter the sacred Ekur, the house that is like a mountain. Enlil was enraged by his sacrileges and his transgressions, and then he cast a curse on Naram-Sin and all Agade. Naram-Sin died from a scorpion sting, and by Enlil's command, all of Agade was annihilated. That was the year 1500 by Earth's counting. In the second region, in the domains of Marduk, Ra, known as Amun, the Invisible, the royalty disintegrated. Disorder and confusion found space. After Agade was swept away in the first region, there was also disorder and confusion. In the first region, the royalty was in disorder. Before the gods, the cities gradually came to be governed and conducted by men. Uruk, Lagash, Ur, and Kish, Esan, and other even more distant and far-flung places, the royalty was changing. Enlil sought the guidance of Anu and entrusted the royalty to Nannar. Thus, for the third time, the royalty was established in Ur. To rule, Nannar selected a just shepherd of men. That was Ur-Nammu. Ur-Nammu was a great ruler. He established equality in the lands, ended violence and fighting, and in all the lands, prosperity was abundant. It was in those times that during the night, Enlil had a dream vision. Just as Enki had seen at another time, Enlil also saw. It was the image of a man shining and radiant as the skies. He stood beside Enlil's bed, and when he approached, Enlil observed and recognized Galzu, the white-haired one. In his left hand, he held a lapis lazuli tablet on which the starry heavens were drawn. The heavens were divided by the signs of the 12 constellations, and Enlil could recognize. Galzu signaled the shift. The sign of the bull was no longer pointed out, and 3 times Galzu pointed to the constellation of the ram. In the dream vision, Galzu spoke to Enlil. The rightful time of benevolence and peace will be followed by wickedness and the shedding of blood. Marduk's ram will replace Enlil's bull in the 3 celestial portions. He who has declared himself the supreme god will take over the supremacy on earth. By decree of fate, a calamity as never before will happen. And as in the times of the flood, a just and worthy man must be chosen. Through him and by him, his seed will be preserved and civilized humanity will survive, as is the will of the Creator of all. When Enlil woke up from the dream vision, there was no tablet next to the bed. Enlil wondered, was it a heavenly oracle, or did I imagine everything in my heart? Enlil asked himself, and kept the information only to himself. He did not tell any of his children, not even his wife, Ninlil. Among the priests in the temple of Nibru-Ki, Enlil asked about the celestial sages. He inquired about Tirhu, also known as Terra, an oracular priest, whom the high priest pointed out. He was a descendant of Ebru and Arbakad, the 6th generation of priests of Nibru-Ki, and had married the royal daughters of the kings of Ur. Enlil said to Terra, "Go to the temple of Nanar in Ur, and from there observe the celestial time in the heavens. 72 Earth years is the count of a celestial portion. Take careful note of the passage of 3 of them." While Enlil pondered his dream vision and its omens, Terra went to the temple of Nanar, and Marduk traveled from land to land. Marduk's goal was to gain followers, telling them about his supremacy. In the lands of the Upper Sea and in the borderlands of Sumer, Nabu, Marduk's son, traveled stirring people to take the 4th region. Among the inhabitants of the West and the East, conflicts occurred. Kings formed armies of warriors and caravans stopped traveling. City walls rose for protection. Enlil watched everything with great care and attention. He realized that what Galzu had predicted was really happening. He realized that he should make his decision. Enlil looked more closely at Terra and his sons. This seemed to him a worthy lineage, and from there should be chosen the man appointed by Galzu. Without revealing his dream vision, Enlil said to his son, Nanar, "Establish a city, inspired by Ur, in the land between the rivers. It will be a home away from Ur, and it will be for you and Ningal. In its midst, you must raise a sanctuary temple, and let Terra be its high priest." In accordance with his father's decree, Nanar established the city of Haran in the lands of Arbakad. To serve as the high priest, he dispatched Terra along with his family. When 2 heavenly parts out of the prophesied 3 were completed, Terra went to Haran. At that time, Urnamu, the joy of Ur, fell from his chariot and met his mortal fate in the western lands. Upon the throne of Ur, Shulgi took command. He bore a warrior's soul and had a keen appetite for battles. In Nibru-Ki, he anointed himself high priest and sought solace in the body of Inanna in Uruk. He enlisted the mountain warriors, those not serving Nanar, into his army. With his forces, he disregarded the sanctity of the Mission Control Center and invaded the western lands. Setting foot in the 4th region, he declared himself king of the 4 regions. Enlil was angered and summoned Enki for a conversation. Enki spoke. "The rulers of your region have crossed all bounds." Enlil retorted, "Marduk is the root of all troubles." While keeping the vision dream to himself, Enlil turned his attention to Terra. Terah had an elder son. His name was Ibru, also known as Abraham. Abraham was a prince, brave and well-versed in priestly secrets. Enlil ordered Abraham to guard the holy places and allow the celestial chariots' ascent and descent. As soon as Abraham left Haran, Marduk, who had been wandering through each city and region, reached Haran. Marduk, too, had observed the desecrations and invasions by the rulers of Enlil's regions. He noticed that this was the harbinger of a new era and a new order. So, on the border with the lands of Sumer, while in Haran, Marduk planned his final assault. 24 Earth years had passed since Marduk arrived in Haran. And then, by a message of the oracle of the temple, he knew that time has come. With tears in his eyes, Marduk called upon the other gods, all of them. Just as my belt wraps around me, I recall my memories. I am the divine Marduk, a great god. In my domain I am known as Ra. I was exiled due to my sins and was banished to the mountains. I have wandered many lands, from where the sun rises to where it sets. I reached the land of Ishkur. I lived in Haran for 24 years and sought an oracle in its temple. I asked about my lordship, and the oracle of the temple told me, "Your days of exile have ended. O great gods who determine destinies, let me return to my city. Let me establish myself in my temple Esagil, and from there install a king in Babylon. Let all Anunnaki gods gather in my house and accept my covenant." The Anunnaki gods were perturbed and alarmed. Enlil summoned all Anunnaki for a council. All were agitated about the events, and the position of opposition to Marduk and Nabu was unanimous.
This is a story in the land of the Chaldeans. Several references to the city of Ur and Ur of the Chaldees are also presented in the text. This location is said to be the residence of Abraham's fathers and Abraham's own residence and country. The book of Abraham gives some specific details about Ur and this land of the Chaldeans that are not found in the Genesis account. This includes an apparent degree of Egyptian cultural and religious influence in the area and being in or near the vicinity of the plain of Olishem. Where exactly is Abraham's Ur of the Chaldees? For centuries, the traditional location for Muslims, Jews, and Christians was the city of Urfa, modern Sanliurfa in southeast Turkey. In the 1920s, however, the excavations of Sir Leonard Woolley at Tel El Mukayyar in southern Iraq identified an ancient Sumerian city called Urim or Uru. Woolley argued that this site was the location of Abraham's Ur, not the traditional site in Turkey. Woolley's argument has since gained widespread acceptance among biblical scholars. While Woolley's identification of Urim with the biblical Ur has remained popular, other scholars have challenged it. Chief among them has been Cyrus Gordon, a member of Woolley's excavation team, who disputed Woolley's identification on linguistic and archaeological grounds. He and a vocal minority of scholars have argued for candidates in northern Syria and southern Turkey as being Abraham's Ur. An additional complication besides locating Abraham's Ur is identifying the ancient Chaldeans or Chaldees, mentioned in both the Book of Abraham and the Book of Genesis. Our best current evidence suggests that they were a nomadic Semitic tribe from modern Syria who immigrated into Mesopotamia and established a dynasty that came to power as the Babylonian Empire. The infamous biblical king Nebuchadnezzar was a descendant of these Chaldeans, and by his time the name Chaldean had become synonymous with Babylonian. Unfortunately, we have practically no inscriptional or archaeological evidence for the identity of the Chaldeans before they entered Mesopotamia long after Abraham's lifetime. We therefore still have large gaps in the archaeological record that do not permit us to say much about the Chaldeans during Abraham's lifetime. Latter-day Saint scholars who have approached this question have pointed out that a northern Syrian Turkish location for Ur is much more favorable for the Book of Abraham than a southern Mesopotamian location. For one thing, as mentioned, the Book of Abraham mentions some kind of Egyptian cultural influence or presence in and around Abraham's homeland of Ur. Abraham's kinsmen included the god of Pharaoh and their worship, along with a priest of Pharaoh to carry out the rituals and practice ritual human sacrifice after the manner of the Egyptians. There is presently no evidence for Egyptian influence in southern Mesopotamia during the lifetime of Abraham, but the evidence for Egyptian influence in northern Syria, there is evidence for Egyptian presence in northern Syria at this time. Additionally, the proximity of Abraham's Ur to the plain of Olishem is an important geographical detail that works best in a northern as opposed to southern location. The Book of Abraham's Olishem has been plausibly identified with the ancient city of Ulisum or Ulishum, located somewhere in southern Turkey, although the precise location remains debated. Taken together, the evidence from the Book of Abraham text and external archaeological and inscriptional sources can reasonably point us in the general direction of modern northern Syria and Turkey as the ancient homeland of Abraham. While there are many questions the scholars still grapple with, enough evidence has surfaced over the years that paint a generally reliable picture of the historical and geographical world described in the Book of Abraham.
In the council of the great gods, accusations were abundant, and recriminations filled the chamber. Tension seized everyone. Enki spoke up and advised, "No one can prevent what is about to come. Let us accept Marduk's supremacy." But these were only Enki's words. An irritated Enlil opposed, "If the age of the ram is coming, let's prevent it from reaching the heaven-earth bond. Let's annihilate the place of the celestial chariots." All decided to annihilate the place of the celestial chariots except for Enki. Nergal suggested using the weapons of terror, and all the Anunnaki agreed. Only Enki opposed, once again. Thus, the decision taken on Earth was sent to Anu, and Anu repeated the same words to Earth. The decision was made. As he departed, Enki said, "What was destined to be will fail due to your destructive decision." To carry out the evil deed, two were chosen. They were Ninurta of Enlil's clan, and Nergal of Enki's clan. And then the assembly of the gods ended, and so the decision was made. Enki was the only one who opposed, but his heart was at peace. Before Enlil came to Earth, it was he and Abgal who had hidden the weapons of terror. Enki had no idea that Enlil had two secrets, the vision dream of Galzu and the secret location of the weapons of terror. Enki did not know that Abgal had shown Enlil the secret location of the weapons of terror during his exile. Enki could never imagine that their long stay on Earth would provoke a calamity unlike anything known before on this planet. Without any contact with Enki, Enlil revealed to the two Anunnaki, Ninurta and Nergal, the secret location of the weapons of terror. He showed them the mountain where they were hidden and told them that they were inside an earth cavity. Afterwards, he revealed the secret of how to use the weapons of terror appropriately. Before the two Anunnaki left for the hidden place, Enlil gave them words of warning. He said, "Before the weapons of terror are used, evacuate the place of the celestial chariots of all Anunnaki. The cities must be spared, and people must not perish." In his celestial chariot, Nergal headed for the hidden place, but Ninurta was delayed due to his father. Enlil wanted to talk to his son in private. So, Enlil told Ninurta about his dream vision and Galzu, and also about his choice regarding Abraham. Enlil told Ninurta, Nergal may not be in perfect conditions of thinking. Make sure the cities are spared, and warn Abraham about the weapons of terror. Meanwhile, Nergal, who had already arrived at the secret location of the weapons of terror, programmed the ME to utilize the weapons of terror. Nergal gave each of them a working name. The first weapon he called the One Without Rival, the second the Blazing Flame, the third the One Who with Terror Crumbles, the fourth Mountain Melter, the fifth Wind that the Rim of the World Seeks, the sixth the One who above and below no one spares, and the seventh, filled with monstrous poison, he named Vaporizer of Living Things. After the instructions from his father, Ninurta went to the secret location of the weapons of terror. When he arrived there, Nergal had everything ready to cause destruction and annihilation. Nergal, desiring revenge, said, I will kill the son and annihilate the father. The lands they covet will fade away, and I will destroy the sinful cities. Ninurta asked, Nergal, will you destroy the righteous with the unjust? Nergal replied, Enlil's instructions are clear, and I know the decision of the Anunnaki too. Then the two waited for Enlil's signal. 7 days and 7 nights they waited. During this time, Marduk returned to Babylon in the presence of all his followers. With weapons in hand, he declared his supremacy. But this was Enlil's intention and the necessary step for the destruction to begin. That was the year 1736 in the count of the Earthlings. On that fateful day, Enlil sent the signal to Ninurta. With the signal, Ninurta left for Mount Mashu and Nergal followed him.
Abraham, get out of your country, from your family and from your father's house, to a land that I will show you. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you.
Many years had passed by since Abraham had left Haran with Lot and his household. And now some of them had started to become impatient. Where was this promised land?
Abraham, what's your plan now that we're here? After all, we're responsible for a lot of livestock and people.
Be patient, Lot. God makes the plans. We follow his will.
Lift your eyes now and look from the place where you are. Northward, southward, eastward and westward. For all the land which you see, I give to you and your descendants forever. And I will make your descendants as the dust of the earth, so that if a man could number the dust of the earth, then your descendants also could be numbered.
Fourth region. With a heavy heart, Ninurta signaled Nergal and warned, "Stay there." And from high in the sky, Ninurta released the first weapon of terror. The top of Mount Mashu cracked and the guts of the mountain melted in an instant. The second weapon was released over the place of the celestial ships, and with the brilliance of 7 suns, the rocks of the plain became an open wound. The earth shook and collapsed, and then the skies darkened. The plain of the celestial ships was covered with burnt and crushed stones. In all the forests that once surrounded the plain, only 3 trunks stood. Ninurta, from high on the celestial ship, from his black bird, affirmed, "It is done." And so, the lands coveted by Marduk and Nabu were forever devastated. Then Nergal said he wanted to be the Annihilator and desired the title of Era through his deed. Following the king's road, he flew to the green valley of the 5 cities. Nergal planned for this to happen in the Green Valley where Nabu was converting the people. Thus, over the 5 cities, one after the other, Nergal, under the title of Era, sent a weapon of terror from the skies. And so, in a wave of destruction, he completely annihilated the 5 cities of the valley, which quickly turned into desolation. They were razed by fire and sulfur, and everything that lived there turned into vapor. With such terrible weapons, the mountains came down, and the barrier that held the waters of the sea broke. The sea waters spilled into the valley, and the valley was flooded by the waters. When the waters poured over the ashes of the cities, steam rose to the skies. From high on his ship, Nergal shouted, "It is done." And so, in his heart, Nergal, now known as Era, had no more vengeance. He had done what he planned. Inspecting their evil work, Ninurta and Nergal were confused by what they saw. The splendors were followed by the darkening of the skies, and soon after the storm blew. Inside a dark cloud, whirlwinds formed in the sky and an evil wind rose, plunging the sky into twilight. As the day went on, the sun disappeared and darkness took over the horizon. Night came, and with it a dreadful splendor highlighted its edges, causing the moon to disappear, swallowed up in a dense cloud of destruction. When dawn came the next day, coming from the west, from the upper sea, a wind of a dense storm began to blow, and then the dark brown cloud moved east, heading towards the inhabited lands. The dark brown cloud traveled, and wherever it went, it brought the death of everything that was, without any mercy. From the valley of no pity, the cloud of death was carried to the lands of Sumer. Ninurta and Nergal gave the alarm to Enki and Enlil. They announced, "The evil wind is relentless, and it will bring death to all." Enlil and Enki transmitted the alarm to the gods of Sumer with a clear message: "Escape, escape." They shouted to all. The frightened gods fled from their cities and quickly ascended to the heavens. The message to the people was clear: scatter and hide as quickly as possible. The inhabitants of the lands fell under the claws of the evil wind, and their fugue was completely useless. Death was silent, and like a ghost, it attacked all fields, all lands, and all cities. The winds of death passed through the thickest walls like the waters of a flood. There was no door that could keep the wind away. Those who hid inside their houses, and with the doors closed, were swept away. And thus, like flies, they fell to the ground. The streets were piled with bodies, and the mouths of those trying to survive overflowed with saliva and foam, and then the blood came with a premonition of death. Slowly, the evil wind blew over all the lands and crossed from west to east over plains and mountains and annihilated everything that lived. After its passage, nothing was left alive. The waters, once clear, were poisoned, and in the fields all vegetation wilted. From Eridu in the south to Sippar in the north, the evil wind devastated the country. In the second region, all lands south of Babylon were devoured by the evil wind, which also reached the heart of the second region. But ironically, the sacred Babylon, from where Marduk had declared his supremacy, was spared by the evil wind. And from there, where Marduk and his followers had declared command of the whole earth, everything continued as if nothing had happened. After the great calamity, Enki and Enlil met to analyze what had happened. Enki said, "The fact that Babylon survived the great calamity serves as a divine sign. the salvation of Babylon confirms that Marduk was destined for supremacy. Enlil replied, "It must have been the will of the Creator of all." Then Enlil revealed the dream vision and the prophecy of Galzu. Enki questioned, "If you knew about this, why didn't you prevent the use of the weapons of terror?" Enlil said in a distressed voice, "My brother, the reason was clear. After your arrival on Earth, each time the mission was obstructed, we found a way to overcome the obstacle. Thus happened the creation of Earthlings, which was the grand solution, and this was also the source of a myriad of undesirable turns. When you came to understand the celestial cycles and assigned constellations, who could foresee the hands of fate? Who could distinguish between the lots we chose and the fate we could not avoid? Who proclaimed false omens and who could pronounce true prophecies? It was for this reason that I decided to keep to myself Galzu's words. I needed to know, were the words of the emissary of the Creator of all true, or was it my delusion? So I said to myself, what has to happen, let it happen. Enki listened to his brother's words, nodding his head. Enki said, "The first region is desolate, the second region is in chaos, the third region is wounded, the place of the celestial ships no longer exists." That's exactly what happened. Enlil said, "So that was the will of the Creator of all. And if that was the will, then this is what is left of our mission on Earth. This is exactly what was sown through Marduk's ambitions. So let him reap the seed of what he has planted. Let the 50th position, which was to be Ninurta's, be granted to Marduk, and let Marduk declare his supremacy over the desolation in the regions. As for me and Ninurta, we will no longer stand in his way. We will go to the lands beyond the oceans, and for the reason we came here, on a mission to obtain gold for Nibiru, we will continue until the conclusion of our tasks." Enki listened carefully. Then he said, "Perhaps things could have been different if the weapons of terror had not been used." And Enlil replied, "And if we had not heard Galzu's words to not return to Nibiru, what would have happened? And if we had stopped the Earth mission when the Anunnaki organized the first rebellion?" The two pondered. Enki said, "I did what I did, and you did what you did. The past cannot be undone. Isn't there also a lesson in this? Isn't what happened on Earth a reflection of what happened on Nibiru? Is the past an outline for the future? Will humanity, created in our image and likeness, not repeat our successes and failures?" Enlil remained silent, and when he stood up to leave, Enki reached out to him and said, "Let us greet each other as brothers and as comrades who have faced many challenges on a foreign planet." Enlil reciprocated, and grabbing his brother's arm, he also embraced him. Enki asked, "Will we meet again on Earth or on Nibiru?" Enlil responded with another question. Was Galzu right? Would we die if we returned to Nibiru? Then Enlil turned and left. Enki was left alone. Only his thoughts accompanied him. Enki sat down and reflected on how everything had started and how everything had unfolded until now. In his heart, many doubts still remained. Was everything destined, or was fate forged by this or that decision? He pondered to himself, if heaven and earth were regulated by cycles within cycles, could it be possible for what happened in the past to happen again? Is the past the key to the future? Are the Earthlings destined to imitate the Anunnaki? Will the Earth relive what Nibiru lived? Should the first to arrive be the last to leave? Assailed by his thoughts and numbed by his doubts, Enki made a decision. He said to himself, "Everything that happened needs to be recorded, from the beginning on Nibiru until this day on Earth, and that in posterity, at the time chosen by destiny, the Earthlings read this record and can remember the past to understand the prophecies of the future. Let the future be the judge of the past." Thus, Enki waited for the appropriate time, And on the 17th day of the 2nd month of the 7th year, after the great calamity, he called for 2 emissaries. He clarified that his chosen one to record the information was a scribe, son of Udbar, a man of Eridu, named Endubsar, the master scribe. He told the emissaries that they should lead his chosen one by a small ship to the lands of Magan, in ancient Egypt, where the gates are, in the middle of the river of Magan. And there, for 40 days and 40 nights, Endubsar, the chosen one, recorded all the information on 14 tablets, and then recorded his own attestation. Thus Endubsar, one of the survivors who had escaped death during the destruction of Eridu, received from Enki the blessing of the long life. Through the hands of Endubsar, the words of Lord Enki were recorded on the 14 tablets. No word was lost, no word was hidden, and his words traveled through time and space until in the future this story finally found us.